Welcome to Jazz Zone Together. Today we're joined by longtime New England-based music educator Craig Skeffington. His teaching skills have led him to be a major influence throughout Maine and New England, as well as the nation. Now I'll bring in Dick Dunscomb to direct the interview with Craig. Dick,
Thank you,
take it
Bob.
away.
It's such a nice day to be here with this gentleman from Maine and me speaking from Florida. We've got it covered, don't we, Greg?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just amazing. Your work has been really accepted in the jazz area as well as concert and marching, um, writing skills. But Craig Skeffington is much more than that. So we're going to cover all of that as we get through this interview today. But we'd like to start with a discussion of your early introduction to music and what led you to pursue music and music education as your career.
Hmm. Um, well, thank you. Um, Probably the biggest thing, we all have that one mentor in our life that was like a crossroads. If I didn't meet this person, it was going to end up considerably different. That was my middle school band director, David Saucier. Actually, I'm a trumpet player now, but back in the day, I started on saxophone because it looked shiny, it looked important, and as it turned out, I was just god awful. I mean, I was just here. It was seventh grade. I didn't like it. I just whatever. So I quit, and David ended up moving to our neighborhood where we lived in Old Town, Maine, and he eventually got me back in. I think he probably strung on my parents more, but my parents said, "No, you're back in band." So anyway,
Mhm.
David got me involved in the jazz band, and that was honestly, Dick, the thing that saved my life. I would have probably gone in a far different direction had I not had that mentor in my life early on. So that's one of my most uh, prized memories of that time in my life, and I share that with my kids now. You know, just because you may dislike it now, I hate to use the word hate. It might not be your thing now, but if you hang around long enough, you might come around. So,
So that's great. And you're right. I think we all have that one person that has inspired us and got us
mhm.
on track. So from your middle school, take us through high school and university.
I'm a trumpet player now, and I've had since eighth or ninth grade is when I switched. Um, our high school program was not remarkable. It was good. I had the chance to go to Berkeley or North Texas State. I was accepted at both. I had auditioned at both, but it came right down to it. I was kind of a homebody, and the University of Maine at Orono was our state college, which was literally the next town over. And so I ended up going there, which turned out to be great. I don't know if you know the name Don Stratton.
Hmm.
Don Stratton was a trumpet player there who had worked on Broadway in the 50s. He was a contemporary of Clark Terry. He's on a couple of recordings. He's on one with Clark, Don Rader, and I think Connie Condoli. There, and now the title escapes me. But Don was a heavy player, and so he was my college teacher. And I owe a lot of what I do now to working with Don. And when I left college. I actually went in the service. I was there. I was a music major. Right about the time we're getting close to getting the degree and going on to teach, I kind of had cold feet. So I went into the School of Business and I continued to play and played in all the groups. And then about three classes short of getting my business degree, I'm like, geez, I don't want to do this either. So I left and I went in the service, which was awesome because that's where I picked up the writing. And when I came back, I joined a National Guard unit, and I was in for a total of 12 years. And that afforded me, when I was in the service, a lot of like opportunity to do small group things, do some things that, really didn't work very well, but that's how you start. And so through my association in the Army and then coming back with the National Guard, um, and that skill probably has been the one thing that has served me the best as a teacher. If we're working on a piece of music in band, marching band, doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't fit our kids, I can shape it in a way that it does. And I think that's I wouldn't have had that skill if I hadn't developed that in the service.
Was there an individual that worked with you that gave you that knowledge, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so when I was back in the guard band back in Maine, once I came back from New Jersey, the band commander up in Maine was Stan Buchanan, and you might recognize that name. Stan actually brought his group from Nokomis High School. That's the only band from Maine that's ever played at Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in the early or maybe mid '90s. So Stan gave me a lot of help, and Don Stratton, as luck would have it, not only a heavyweight trumpet player, he was also a writer. And they probably the other person that's had a significant influence, Terry White.
Yeah, of course.
It's ironic that Terry and he lives in the next town over. And so when I was coming up, Terry, I would show him things and he would make comments. When I was a younger man, I played on his big band and got to write. So Terry was a huge influence, and continues to be.
I think it'd be interesting to just tell a little bit about what he's doing in this organization that he's got.
Organization that he's got. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I follow that.
Isn't he involved with that growing band director?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yep. That is Kyle Smith. Kyle Smith is, as luck would have it, he's a former student of mine. Brilliant teacher. I can't take any credit for it. His program is a model of success in Maine. They do everything well. Terry, again, sort of like full circle. Terry was the band director at Westbrook High School ages ago. And Terry is the guy, he's sort of the patriarch of education right now in Maine. So if you have a festival and you need a judge, you call Terry. If you need a clinician, you call Terry. And so he's been very gracious with his time, over the years, including he's done a lot of episodes with Kyle on the Growing Band Director about repertoire for, grade 2, grade 3 jazz band, but he's well versed. He's also a concert band guy too, which a lot of people I don't think appreciate.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking about concert band guys, you're one of them. In a way, you've done a lot of writing for concert band and marching band. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the concert band, I have a couple of things. I really like doing it. With my schedule as a teacher, and I'm not sure to what degree, Dick, what did you play as an instrument, if you don't mind my asking?
I began on trumpet and eventually played trombone.
Nice. Geez, I'm so sorry. I had that tangent. Remind me of the question again. That's
no. It was about your experience and what led you into marching band writing.
Oh, yes,
concert band.
Yep. A lot of it. The jazz band thing is a little easier for me just because I have a little bit of time. I'll do an intro. I get a period free before the kids come in for band. I'll work on a sax solo. But the concert band thing requires more dedicated time. So the concert band thing has been harder for me just because my schedule, I don't have a boatload of time to do it. But yet when I go to Midwest, every time I leave Midwest, I'm just like, I'm jazzed about the experience. But the bands, the wind ensembles, the wind symphonies just get better and better. I mean, I'm just amazed. And there's so much crossover now between like pop and jazz genre and the contemporary wind band thing. You look at Omar Thomas or somebody like that. Some of that stuff is just ridiculous. And we have a marching band here. When I took over the program at South Portland, it was a heavy marching band, jazz band school, as well as the curricular, concert band, wind ensemble. So it was like in for a penny, in for a pound. And there have been several marching band shows that I've written, for our kids. I would love to, when I retire, maybe break into more, I'll have more time to write. So I'll do more with the concert band thing. And if I can get in with the marching band thing, but, I'm happy to be published by anyone at this point. So, beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into your writing for jazz band in a little bit. But first, I'd like to ask you, you've been a band director for 30 years. And you've had so many successful programs and touched thousands of lives. Tell us some of the concepts that you build on to carry on this long-standing tradition.
Well, you're very kind. I think the biggest thing, and I think anyone's successful that has had accolades or whatever would be they should be the first person to say it was the middle school folks. It was our beginning band director. Beginning band director when I started was John Furman, 5th grade, and he saved me from myself time and time again. Our middle school teachers over the years have been fantastic. They send good kids, seasoned kids who can play. So that's a big part of it. And from my end, I'd like to think that the kids see, my car is usually the first one here in the morning, and it's oftentimes one of the last ones to leave. And there's a kind of a running joke with the kids about that. But I'm willing to put the work in, so they should too, that kind of thing. And I think for the most part, that goes unsaid, but I think that I think that message carries across. And, the other thing is just involve them. I get Michelle Fernandez is, such a great educator. She was telling me about her program in Miami, and she was like a den mother, and so I try to get to know the kids. And of course, this is the blessing of our job, as we hope we have them, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. You get to watch the kids grow up. That's a big deal. I think more often than not, I'm more excited to hear that the kid got into college and got a full ride or whatever than I am that, they just played their all-state. Do you know what I mean? It's more like whole life sort of thing as opposed to just the music job.
Yes, I agree totally. So you've been recognized as a Hall of Fame member in the Maine Music Education Society. Tell us how that came about and what does that mean?
Well, boy, I'll tell you, I was, first of all, I think whoever was guarding the gate that day, like let down their guard for a second and they slipped this one in and, whatever. they can't take it back now. Kyle Smith, the fella at Westbrook that I told you about, Kyle took it upon himself. And again, I know Kyle well. His growing band director thing is unbelievable. His program is fantastic. Kyle essentially tricked me. There's another band director in Maine who's been teaching longer than I have, very successful man, Jeff Priest. And so I'm friends with Jeff. The bell just went off. I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. Okay, I'm so sorry. It's like I got things going on in different ears there. I'm trying to monitor that.
The good old announcements.
Yeah.
I remember well.
Yeah. So Kyle said, I'm nominating Jeff for the Hall of Fame. Would you go? Knowing Jeff's a good friend of mine, and I'm from where he teaches. I'm from Old Town. Well, unbeknownst to me, he told Jeff, I'm nominating Craig for the Hall of Fame award. So Jeff went for me and I went for Jeff, and we're at the award ceremony and Jeff got his. And I'm like, that's so great. He had no idea. And then as it turns out, the next one was me. So Kyle put me in. It's a nomination thing, and it goes to the MMEA board, and they approve or disapprove of the nominations as they come through. So, I guess the moral of the story is if you stick around long enough, maybe you'll fool somebody. So I guess that's what that was.
I love your humor. You are such a great person. I'm just so appreciative to have this time with you.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about your trumpet playing. What are you doing these days?
I play a fair amount. Sadly, I don't practice a fair amount. And being a former trumpet player, you could appreciate that. I play in a group called the Portland Jazz Orchestra, which is a really high-end group. There's a lot of fine jazz musicians in the Portland, Maine area. And the great thing is I play on that and I get to write for it. Sadly, with my teaching schedule, the saying that the cobbler's kids have no shoes. If you're doing nothing but working on shoes all day, you're not going to be, willing to take another 2 or 3 hours to. So anyway, that saying sort of applies to me. I'm around music all time, and I think if I can do this, I'm not sure if I can get that, but there's a couple of horns. I keep a horn at my feet on a trumpet stand down there. So if there's nobody around and I got maybe 10 minutes, I'll do some lip slurs or just trying to keep it going. But, you know, I'm getting older and the trumpet is no less forgiving than it ever was. So it seems like it's a constant uphill battle. But the Portland Jazz Orchestra, I play in a group called the Seacoast Big Band. There's a Tower of Power sort of tribute band. So lots of playing opportunities. I think people, when they come to Maine, a lot of guys, I have to think, the writer Jim McNeely. Jim McNeely retired to Maine. He retired to Owl's Head. And I forget his name. He was the second tenor player on Winton's Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. He retired to the next town over, Scarborough. But when people come up here, I think that they're like, oh my God, I had no idea that there was a scene up here, you know? So it's certainly not Tampa or, you know, down in Florida, but for Maine, I think it's pretty healthy. And so I'm on a number of those groups that are active around here.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. I mean, that means a lot, not only to you, but to your students, that you're active and involved in it. Let's go now to the real scene, which you're known for nationwide, and that is your jazz writing. What clues can you give us and those aspiring young people watching that want to be a writer in the jazz area? How does it all work, Craig?
That's a great question. Here's the biggest answer, and this, I tell everybody this, like I have an AP music theory class and I have a theory class. When we do composition, I tell them, we got to get your stuff played. You know, don't take 7 months and, you know, piecemeal this thing together. Write 8 bars. Let's get that. So that's really the hook. When you finally get something that you wrote, blood, sweat, and tears, you can hear back. And that's my big thing, is like young aspiring writers, don't wait until the thing's done. Get it, you know, 16 bars, extract your parts and hear what you've done. You know, other than that, you know, I think the biggest thing, and I think anyone who's interested in writing that would take it to that level, listen, just listen. You know, my favorite writers that I feel like I've gotten from, because I listen to them a lot, Mike Camiff's writing. I really like Mike's writing for school band. Mark Taylor, of course, is like the patriarch of all, you know, school age jazz publications, and, you know, wrote for Kenton back in the day. So those are 2 of the more prolific ones that I listen to a lot. And of course, Terry, you know, Terry's writing. The joke is Terry's never, the first chart that Terry writes that's a bad chart will be the first bad chart that Terry wrote. Everything he writes is like instant big band, just add water. So listen to people who excel at what it is you want to do, and, you know, copy that, you know, do what they do, you know. And so Mike's been very gracious with his time. Other ones like Dean Sorensen. Dean's been great. I've asked questions. He's taken some of my stuff for publication. Pete Barenbreg, while not a writer, you know, was a heavy player back in the day. So I've been fortunate to befriend many people. Michelle Fernandez is now a good friend of mine. So we talk about questions and we talk about things jazz related. And Michelle's been up to Maine several times. So yeah, I would say listening is probably the biggest thing. And then number 2, young writers, get that music written and heard before you get buried, because we all get buried in the minutia, and really there's just nothing better than I wrote that, you know. And so it's a real reward. I love watching the kids, the look on their face when they write some sort of chorale and we print the parts out and their eyes are as big as saucers. It's like, you know, the band is playing their music, and that just seems so foreign to them, but it's also really cool.
You know, it's interesting too. We're blessed, I think, in this area. We've got, as you've begun to just list a few of the really outstanding writers, but there's one area which we're always looking for, and I've had so many band directors ask me, and that's a grade 2 level or an easy grade 3. Is that harder to write for, or what? Why do we not have more there?
Well, that's a funny thing. So from a commercial standpoint, That's where the market is. I mean, grade 1 and 2, and there's not that many people that are doing that. The stuff that I've gotten in has been mostly grade 3. I've had a couple things at the grade 2.5 level, one or two things at the grade 4 level, but I'm sort of like really advanced middle school, kind of average high school in terms of difficulty. I have, this is a failing of my own. I've tried many times. I'll sit down and write something out. I said, that's really great. Then I'm going to harmonize it the second time. I'm going to sharp 9 on that chord. And about, I don't know, half an hour later, I realized I just went from grade 1 to grade 2.5 because of all the skip thing I was thinking of. So being able to maintain that level and not let your ego dictate, what it is you're putting in there, but common sense and writing for, a very specific purpose. I think that's harder to do than people think it is.
Yeah,
and there's, I'm sorry not to interrupt, other guys like Rick Stitzel or Rick Hirsch. There's a bunch of guys that are turning out grade 2, 3, like a wide variety. So when I retire, when I slow down, probably and right now I'm with Kendor, and Blair Bielowski has been, fantastic. And he said the same thing. Do you have any grade 1 or grade 2 things? So when I have more time to devote to that, that's like my next thing, is sort of kind of gear down a little bit, but try to provide some quality music at that level. I just judged this weekend. I judged the state middle school jazz festival, and listen, nothing but grade 1 and 2 music. And I remember thinking, yes, it's I saw the answer right in front of me. It's like, okay, we need to provide those folks and those band directors at that level more quality literature for, there. So I will eventually get there, I hope.
Well, and it's as you say, that's where the marketplace is today. I'm happy that I'm able to do the new music reading session at Midwest every year. And there's just such a wealth of grade 3, 4, 5 materials available. Anyway, let's get off that subject.
Well, I want to throw one thing. So I've been going to Midwest since I started here in 1994. And I think that was the first Midwest I've been to. And I always go to the new reading sessions. And I remember thinking, boy, I would love to have a chart on the new reading session and have him read my name. So the first time it happened, when you were up there, I was like, it in my head, it went full circle. It's like, okay, I've arrived. Dick Dunscomb has now mentioned my name in front of people at Midwest. So.
Oh, that's funny. You know how that comes about. It's the publishers that submit. And so we need more reviewers, that's for sure. And you mentioned Rick. He was the previous interview that we did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting guy for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned judging middle school bands. You've seen middle school, you've seen high school. What's your impression of the state of jazz education today?
Well, it's a great question. I would say in Maine, I think it's quite good. I took my group to the Maine State High School Jazz Festival for combos and big bands 2 weeks ago. And our kids got a gold. They played well. But I didn't hear any groups really lacking. There were a bunch of groups that were really quite good. And I think we've, the saying that a rising tide floats all ships. So I think the level of education amongst the educators, we've exposed them. So I think everybody's groups, even at the middle school level, there was one or two that the director didn't program appropriately, like two pop tunes at a jazz festival. I mean, euphemism, we call them straight eighth tunes, right? But if it's listen, if you're going to come to a jazz festival, do something that swings, please. I'm begging you. And I get that it's easier to teach straight eighth, right? Because you reach the kids quicker. But you can get buy-in on anything if you just do it the right way. And so we now have more teachers doing more appropriate music, at least in Maine. And I was fortunate this year in terms of like getting a broad spectrum of what's out there. I did a festival in Connecticut and I did the All-State for Georgia. this past year, and both of those festival ensembles were killing. That just in their programs, they all come from strong programs. So I can speak, very highly of what I've heard there. Ages ago, I did one in Kentucky. I don't know if you know Chris Strange.
Mhm.
Chris is in, I think, Lexington. And when I did that festival, same thing. Just great kids. So much of what I've seen out in the world where I've been has just been stellar. So I'm sure there are pockets in the country that aren't really, getting that done, because maybe their bag is more marching band or concert band. But I think on the whole, I think we're in a pretty good direction.
I
Let me
agree
just
with you,
good.
and I'll add to that the bands in Florida. There's some really terrific groups here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I would not be surprised. I would love to, if anyone's listening, I would love to come down and work in Florida, especially getting out of Maine in the winter. That would not be wouldn't be much of a hard sell to me.
that's a good commercial.
Right? There you go.
Now let me do one. We on the Midwest Jazz team are always looking for groups from all across the country. And you say, there's only one group from Maine that has appeared at Midwest.
Mhm.
So you want to be number two?
This is sort of like the Walter Mitty thing, when like I finally had a piece read on the thing and you mentioned my name and it was great, whatever. I have long thought, about doing that. And I also have an acute sense of self-preservation. So I'm not sure that I would have the manpower because that whole thing, in for a penny, in for a pound, that whole thing about arranging the travel, everything that goes on with that. I would love to, but I don't think. And of course, here's the other thing: those bands that go have like systemic excellence year to year to year. They're not rebuilding; they're just reloading. The middle school kids come up; they all have. So I appreciate that, and I think your point is more people should take the barriers off and try, right? But yeah, in terms of where we are, I think I'm painfully close to the end of my education career. So if there's a group from South Portland, it probably won't have me in front of it, but it may for somebody down the line.
Well, I know what we really are always acutely aware of is that we don't have enough middle school bands
Yep.
make application. And that's such an important area for us at Midwest because, we deal with the directors that do everything. We don't just deal with people that are just jazzers, but more people like yourself that's doing the entire program. And so, that, as you mentioned earlier, that building block at the beginning, intermediate level is so critical to the success of any program.
Yep. And I'm sure you have, as the saying goes, where the bodies are buried. Someone like me, who goes, mostly as an observer, although, I could kind of peek under the curtain a little bit. I wouldn't have known that you were short on applications because I go and there's always a quality middle school band or two or three, quality high school bands, it's an amazing thing. And I would just assume that, well, everybody applies to go to Midwest because it's Midwest. Why wouldn't you want to go? So I wouldn't have known that there was a shortage, in that area.
Right. Well, and the other area that I know you're aware of is the clinicians that we have at Midwest. And I can think of one composer that might be pretty good at that.
Well, that would be a different story. That would be another like, wow, I can't believe I'm here story. But yeah, I mean, I because we talked this winter at Midwest. This was a milestone for me. Don Zentz, graciously played one of my charts, and he didn't have to do that, and he certainly didn't have to. Would you like to come and conduct it? What do you say to somebody? Would you like to come and conduct your chart at Midwest? Yes. And then he, like maybe an hour later, he called back and said, "Hey, you're going to be here. Do you want to bring your trumpet?" I mean, again, what do you, yes, I'd be happy to do that. I would love to do that at some point, and retiring from teaching or kind of stepping away from that a little bit will give me that opportunity, I think, to do more of things like that. So those are those are things I'd like to pursue at some point, I think.
Great. So, what's next on the horizon for you and your program?
Well, I mean, so for me, it's funny you ask. I am having my hip replaced on Friday, Friday of next week. So I'm going to be out of school for a while. And so after the initial shock of that, and that maybe the one upside is the Masters is the week after. So I'll be on the couch watching the Masters. I see Bob laughing. So maybe Bob's a golfer too. So other than that, I'm just going to step up the writing thing. It's just, so there's going to be a lot more writing, and as luck would have it, in my thought process, a lot more. I'm going to start a grade 1. I'm going to start a grade 2, and I'm going to kind of force myself to get some things going in that direction. And our program, it's the same of any school band that does marching band in the fall, jazz band. It's kind of a seasonal thing. We're now we've got a big. We're hosting. This is full service band director talk. We're hosting a main area concert band festival tomorrow. There's going to be 20 different schools coming. So when I'm done with the interview, I'm making certificates. I'm still copying stuff. We're getting the auditorium set up. So that's our next big thing. It's like the concert band thing, which I love because jazz serves its purpose. Obviously, marching band serves its purpose, but concert band is the thing that it's your program. It's everybody.
Yeah.
So I have a soft spot in my heart for concert band just because the kid that plays third clarinet's never probably going to play in the jazz band unless they switch and do something else. But concert band, you've got everyone. So we work hard trying to kind of promote that and keep that going. So anyway, that's our next mountain to climb is that one. And then, of course, on the future, planning for next year's marching band show. So it's like, it never seems like it ends. You just check one box and, the next thing comes right up.
So, Craig, it's been wonderful to be with you this afternoon. I really enjoyed it. And I know that our viewers will get a lot out of the information that you shared with them today. And once again, thank you, my friend. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And thank you for all you do for jazz education. And Bob, thanks for pointing the ship in the right direction and bearing with me as I figured out my Zoom malady at the beginning there.
And hey, I appreciate your time and the information you shared. It going to be very insightful to our viewers.
I appreciate that.
To our viewers, thanks for joining us for this Jazz Zone Together interview. Please check our entire library of interviews. We know you'll find them of real value to your program. Watch for updates as we're adding new interviews regularly.